Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks from the bar and come and join us at the table for this short rest with me and Ree in person. How you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be here in person again for a short rest. I'm glad to sort of complete the misfits of short rests. There's been scheduling issues that's been there for a while, unfortunately, but I'm glad that we finally made it work.
Me too. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit nervous.
A little bit nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. We're just having raw onion in a tavern.
Yum. And I love this steak.
And as we know, you serve raw onion and steak on a plate with holes in it.
Of course. There's no other way.
The only way to eat steak and bread. I do love the setting of this place. It's pretty impressive.
It is.
There's always something whenever we're like between takes or something, and I've just got a moment to walk around. There's always something new I find. I'm like, oh, cool. Especially since they put in the fourth wall, as it were, so that they can film it on different angles.
So good. And what I found out is that Pete told me that these steaks, to make them, someone makes a silicone mold of an actual steak.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they would make a mold off a real steak, and then
Oh, wow, that's impressive stuff. Yeah, I just always figured that it was like sculpted out of clay or something.
Same as someone's tinkering.
I thought it was, because I obviously knew that it was like like molded of some sort, but I didn't realize it was molded off of real food. Do they do the same with the bread and stuff, do you reckon?
I don't know, but I do desperately want to eat that bread.
It's especially because it being so spongy, you just want to kind of break it open.
Yeah.
See it steam.
Yum.
So for anyone who's tuning in and doesn't know who you are, brief introduction. What's your story? Who are you?
Yeah, well, my name is Ree. I am an actor and a comedian and a writer, and I know Rob through playing D&D Tale of the Misfits, and I started with Viva, gosh, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Best part of a decade for sure.
Yeah.
And what was your first introduction to them? Actually, we'll get there. We'll start even like further back. You're born and raised in New Zealand?
Yes.
Yeah, born and bred.
Yeah, born and bred in Christchurch.
And what was your sort of what sort of a kid were you? Were you like always into acting sort of things, like performative,
Absolutely.
center of attention?
Yeah, a nightmare to be around.
Yeah.
Extremely extroverted, extremely outgoing. And I had, I wish I still had it, because weirdly, this isn't normal, but when I was a teenager, I had unshakable confidence.
Right, yeah.
I had incredible self-esteem,
I get that.
incredible sense of self-worth, and I loved school, and I was always, having the best time ever.
Yeah, and then life happens to you.
Yeah, and I hit my 20s, and I was like, oh, things don't always go my way.
Yeah, I get that. I think a lot of actors and performers and stuff, they start with that of being like, the world can't get me down.
Yeah.
And then the world gets them down.
Were you like that?
Oh yeah. I was like that a lot, and like I was center of attention and always cracking jokes and stuff, and always been like, oh, I love when I can get eyes on me.
Yeah.
It's never a moment of confidence shaking when I was like on stage as a kid as well. Like I was an actor from like 13 or something, so I was on amateur dramatics and performances on stage and things. And I remember one time I was starting to get what I would consider like stage fright, and then I consciously had the decision to myself. I was like, no, this is your home. Like this is nobody can do this like you do this. I'm fine. Turned off the stage fright immediately. I was like super confident.
Amazing.
Went on the stage, always felt absolutely at home on stage. I used to get comments from like family friends and things that would be like, he's so captivating to watch even when he's just a background character, because I'd be so into it. There was one play I was in called Shadowlands. It turned into a movie with Anthony Hopkins. It was about C.S. Lewis's life, because the guy wrote Narnia. He had like this American pen pal woman who was a widow, and she had a young son, like an 8-year-old. She came over to England, and it was like an odd sort of a dynamic that they had, but kind of a relationship. So he ended up this sort of de facto stepfather to this little kid. And the amateur dramatics group that I was a part of was putting on a play version of it, and they needed a kid. And I was always incredibly young looking for my age. I'm talking like when I was 18, I could still pass as preteen. Like just ridiculously young, which was fantastic as an actor, because it meant that they could pay me without having to pay pay a chaperone. And I could work adult hours, but I could still pass as a kid. And it was the same with this play. I was like 16 and playing an 8-year-old on stage. And I'd just be, for many of the scenes, it's just C.S. Lewis and I forgot her name now, his partner. And they'd just be having like this dialogue or whatever, and I'd just be in the background reading books or whatever. And friends would be like, I ended up just ignoring what was happening on the stage because Rob's just like kicking his legs in such it's such a realistic way. It just feels like you're watching a kid. So I was always absolutely at home on stage. And then, later on, you go to drama school and they break you down. Try and build you back up again. And then they just end up breaking you and not building you back up again. You just stay, oh, great, thanks. Glad I paid a student loan for that.
Yeah, totally. You probably like that, if you're like me, you just enjoy playing make-believe.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're like, when you're in a play and you're one of those background characters and the director's like, you have to always be doing something. You have to not, get out, you have to be constantly concentrated on what you're doing. I'm like, well, of course I am.
I'm still playing. Me. I'm playing. I'm thinking through the realism of the entire scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to do that. Even if the book was blank, I'd be like deciding what's on the page that I'm reading. And somehow still aware of like when your cue is coming up, which was always like just I think it's like more of a talent than a skill. Talent than a skill for me, more like an inherent thing that I just knew how to do rather than something that I'd specifically trained to do. Just kind of aware of those things. Yeah. And then one of the things that I kind of came to a realization with many years later when I was sort of pursuing acting as a living in New Zealand was that it was so much more difficult on screen for me than on stage. Wow. Because on stage, it's kind of like an entire scene and you can kind of be in that moment. And if your make-believe takes you in a particular direction, you can do it. Obviously, there's direction that you've gone over in rehearsal 100 times. But it feels like you go over rehearsals so much in play productions that you can kind of just let that subconsciously be like, oh, this is when I stand up and walk over there. Whereas in screen, I realised there was just so many more technicalities that you don't necessarily rehearse as well, because you don't need to rehearse it if you're only going to shoot it for this particular one thing. But I found that like if I'm here and I'm in focus and I'm here and I'm not in focus, I couldn't get into a role as well because I'm constantly much more aware in like the conscious mind of all of the technicalities and things of screen, and then you're in the middle of something and then somebody just goes, cut, sorry, we're getting out of focus, or we've got a lighting issue or whatever, and you're like, I suddenly made hyper aware of the fact that I was acting in a role rather than being in the character. And there was just lots of that stuff that it took me a few years to realize that it just wasn't gelling with me on the screen acting. I find I'm the same. I enjoy it, but I find it hard, and I find comedy comes really naturally to me, but if it's dramatic, I find it so much easier in a play because you can live it in real time, the journey of the character. But I hate if you're on screen and you're like, okay, so we're doing this scene today, your character's mother's just died, okay, ready and go, and you're like, no, wait, I haven't ready, I haven't been through that process. I've not even met the woman who's playing my mother, because we're filming her death scene first, and then later on we'll be filming the earlier stuff in the it's difficult, isn't it? It's a lot more work for you to sort of like have to write it all down and chronologically and get yourself prepared for what are we shooting today? Oh, well, there's rain, so we've switched up what we're shooting today, so we're actually going to shoot this other scene. I wasn't prepared for that.
Totally.
Yeah, there's some difficult stuff. So you're always sort of centre of attention for acting and comedy. You ever any other sort of performative elements, any musicality or writing poetry or anything like that?
I love musicals. I love them so much, and I wish my dream would be to be a musical theatre performer, but I cannot sing and I cannot dance. I cannot sing.
Two pretty important things for musical theatre.
But I love watching musicals, and I'm always a little bit jealous. But actually, I studied a lot of music at school. I played the flute and the piccolo.
Okay.
And I was in orchestras and concert bands. And I was actually going to study music at uni, like music composition.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of tossing up, do I go more into music or more into drama and acting? And I chose drama and acting. What
was the final decision there?
I think I just enjoyed it a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. When I went back to uni, once I realised sort of I'm just not enjoying acting anymore, I was like 27 and I went back to university to study maths. I went back to study anything because I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I was like, well, shit, this thing that I've been obsessively pursuing since I was like 13, I've just realised it's not actually bringing me joy anymore.
Yeah.
I need to do something else. So I went back to do academia, and I studied a whole bunch of different sciences and realised maths is kind of where I fit. And then at the end of that, my D&D stuff was really taking off, and I was like, felt like I was sort of straddling two trains that were about to come to a divergence, and I was like, oh God. And I had to make the decision of, do I commit to maths because it's more stable, or do I try and make this D&D thing work? And thankfully it worked in a way that I can pay my mortgage doing it and stuff.
That's so cool. I'm also going to take this moment to blow my nose. I didn't know that you studied maths at university.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Do you have a name for your fans? Are they like Rob heads, or are they Dungeon Daddies?
Yeah, no. We've never come up with like a fandom name. There's been a few that have been floated and never stuck. Fine Folk is because of like my introduction as friends, fans, and Fine Folk. Early days, I realised that ladies and gentlemen is a bit too gender binary. I wanted some other options. I've heard people use guys, gals, and non-binary pals, which is quite fun. But I came up with friends, fans, and fine folk, and I thought it kind of encompasses most people. And because of that, some people call themselves sort of fine folk, but
I like that.
Nothing really stuck.
Because it's also like fine folk.
Fine folk. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got some alternate meanings as well if you look.
Yeah.
But yeah, the maths came about because I just kind of realised I wasn't enjoying acting anymore, and I'd always been really sort of left-brained, for want of a better term, academic-minded sort of thing. And at the same time that I started my maths degree, I discovered D&D, and it just kind of, I realised that the thing that I always loved about acting was served even better with D&D. It was kind of like I thought acting was the thing that I was sort of destined for, and I realised since then I was like, oh no, tabletop role-playing games is what I was destined for. Acting was just kind of scratching the itch until I finally discovered tabletop role-playing games.
Wow. So was that the first time you'd done tabletop role-playing games?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
I always assumed that you'd been playing since you were like a teenager or something.
No, about 9 years, since about 2016, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it's coming up to. I think it was March 2016 that I first played D&D, and then I didn't play again for another like 6 months after that, and I was like jonesing for it. I was like, somebody play D&D with me, please.
Yeah.
I need it. Now that I've been introduced to it, I realise how much I need it in my life.
Yeah.
So how about you? What was your first role-playing game experience?
I'd played a few one-shots. Is that the correct? Yeah, I'd done a few one-shot D&Ds with. D&D games with comedians.
Right.
So that was probably my first go at it, but I didn't, it wasn't enough to learn how to play it properly. So our Tale of the Misfits was my first long-term go at it.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
What sort of time are we talking for the one-shots you were doing with comedians? Like over lockdown or before?
Before
everything's either pre-COVID, post-COVID.
They were kind of spread out. I did one before lockdown. They were with different groups of friends who were comedians, but there would be months and months
for like live improv shows sort of things.
Yeah, one was for a podcast. Actually, two were for a podcast, and one was for a live show. Yeah.
Right. And how did that come about? Just somebody suggested it. Oh, this would be fun.
They said, "Oh, well, you like improv, so you'll probably like D&D."
Right.
Yeah, and it was fun, but I think the fun of D&D. Well, from what I've found, is actually the journey of it, without sounding too wanky. It's like, if you play it over a long period of time, you become way more invested in the character's journey, and then way more invested in what's about to happen.
And I think the improv comes a lot easier at that point as well, because it's less thinking of like, oh, what is the funniest thing to do in this moment, or what is the best thing to do in this moment. It's just like, it comes naturally of like, I know who my character is now because I've been playing them for several sessions. I know what they would do in this moment. This is what they're going to do. Yeah. And then you can, and then that decision kind of being taken care of already allows for a more genuine kind of, oh, and this would be really funny, so let's do that as well and stay within character and also make it funny.
Yeah, Phoenix was so good at that, I think, because she had the most experience out of any of us, and then she would quite often be like, I think Rob is making a trap, but my character would do this, so I'm going to
commit to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny you say she has the most experience because she had as much as you. She just got into, like, it hooked her in a way that it hooked me the first time I played. She got into it after that first time that we played, and the first time I played with Phoenix was for D&D Logic Season 1, because we were going to be making a comedy sketch series about the funny things that come up in D&D, and she'd never played. I wanted them to be introduced. Well, she'd played once, I think, with her sister as like a one-shot. But yeah, I wanted everybody in the cast to at least know what the hell we were taking the piss out of. Yeah. So I just ran like a little session 0 sort of thing at my house. Just got people around and laid out one of the maps and just improvised a thing to be like, okay, so this is what this means on a character sheet, and this is blah, blah, blah. And I said, so for instance, you would walk into a bar and I'd say, oh, there's a shady-looking individual at the bar over there, and there's a bartender, and she goes, I'm just going to shoot the guy. Like, before I'd even finished setting up, I was like, what? She goes, yeah, I'm going to shoot the guy. You said he was shady-looking. I'm going to shoot him. I was like, okay. And then, so this is how that works. You roll a thing. And she just took to it immediately for D&D Logic, and then was super excited to be part of the cast for Misfits. So before we get all the way to Misfits, so you child performer sort of limelight kind of a person, and then what point did you decide, like, I'm going to pursue this and I'm going to actually do acting? Were you on stage as a kid? Were you in sort of amateur dramatics, or?
Yeah, I was on stage doing amateur dramatics. I also did lots of improv when I was a teenager, so I did like high school theatre sports competitions. Right. In my final year of school, I went to Switzerland and for a year for a student exchange.
Whereabouts in Switzerland?
Canton Glarus, which is...
I don't know that one.
It's near the border of Austria.
Oh, that's why I don't know.
It's kind of like... I
know the Swiss-French sort of area quite well. I've been there a few times.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we've got family friends in Switzerland. We've been to Bern, been to oh God, name is escaping me now. Zurich. I was like, I kept wanting to say Zagreb, and I was like, that's Croatia. I've also been there, but that's not that. Yeah, Zurich. Bern, Zurich, mostly the sort of Swiss-French side. Yeah. A little bit into Swiss-German kind of part, but I've never really been on the Austrian border. So why Switzerland?
I studied French and German at school.
Right, cool.
Yes, and then I went over there, came back. I did a year of... I auditioned for drama schools in Australia. So I auditioned for NIDA, VCA and WAPA, which are like 3 of the big drama schools there. I didn't get into any of them. So I came back, studied in Christchurch at Hagley Theatre Company, which is like a theatre school. I went over again the next year and auditioned, and I got into VCA, which is a drama school in Melbourne. And the audition process, you will know this, is, if you guys don't know this, it's so intense. It's literally like American Idol. Like, you go through rounds of auditions and like you perform your little tushy off, and then at the end of the day they'll be like, okay, we want to see this person, this person, this person back again. Everyone else, thank you for your time. And you see people being like, it's so awful. Yeah. But I got into this drama school. I was so stoked. I got accepted into a halls of residence. I was like on our class Facebook page meeting people. But that year, VCA had merged with the University of Melbourne. And because I went to Switzerland, I technically didn't finish year 13. And they were like, you don't have university entrance. And then I couldn't go. And I was like, fuck this. And I just moved to Auckland and I raw dogged it. So I never technically finished any kind of drama school or professional training.
And it doesn't matter.
So sorry, that's a very long-winded story.
No, I mean, that's why we have 2 hours to chat. It can be as long-winded with your stories as you want. Good. This is a chance where nobody's going to try and shut you up. You're okay. We can be centre of attention, because I've orchestrated an entire career for myself where I can be centre of attention all of the time. So that's pretty cool that you went to Switzerland because you were studying French and German. Are you fluent in those now? No?
Still fluent in German, because they spoke German where I was living. Yeah. French, not so much. But
did it kind of fuck up your German because it was Swiss German?
Yeah. But what I loved was, I remember afterwards I went travelling and I was in Germany, and they were people assumed that I was from Switzerland because I had a little Swiss accent.
Nice.
And I was so stoked that I'd like integrated myself enough that I'd picked up a Swiss accent.
That's very cute. I like that. I always like it when you hear somebody speaking English that's clearly a second language and you can tell the nationality or the accent of the person who taught them.
Yes, they got like,
you're like
American.
You're speaking like you're a French guy, right? Yeah, but you were clearly taught English by a Scotsman, right? Because you've got a Scottish twang to a Scottish brogue to your accent.
Yeah,
it's always very funny. I also think it's funny when you're traveling and people do assume you're from somewhere else, because not only is it like, oh, I'm doing pretty well at blending in and assimilating with the locals, but also it's very funny that I never get picked up as a local anywhere that I travel except for Germany, because apparently I just look German, blonde hair and the vaguely blue eyes and the pale skin and all that. So a couple of times when I'm in Germany, I have to cut somebody off real quick because they're talking to me and I'm like, whoa, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah, you do look very German.
Yeah, I've got a very Aryan race kind of thing going on, quite to put it bluntly. That's of got going on.
Yeah.
So you were doing your drama school stuff. It kind of didn't really work out. So you moved to Auckland and just was like, let's get an agent and just start going auditions and learn on the job kind of thing.
Yeah.
How hard was it to get yourself an agent and get work?
Getting an agent was not too bad. I was lucky that I was living with a friend, Tim, and he'd been to drama school at Toi Whakaari, and he was really helpful. Tim Earl?
No, I don't think it's the Tim that I know. There was a Tim a year above me, and I was trying to think what his name was.
What year were you at Toi?
I was there 2008 to 2010.
Excuse me.
You're excused.
Excuse me, fine folk. Tim would have been slightly after that, but he just helped me do a bunch of self-tapes, and so I filmed 3 scenes with him, reading and directing, and then I just literally went door knocking. Well, I emailed first and then sent the tapes off, sent a bit about myself. Yep. I got rejected. Like a few agencies just rejected me straight off the bat. A few of them I went in for meetings, and then a few of them offered me to sign with them, and I ended up with my agents.
Nice.
And I was like, great. Now the roles will start.
They'll just start churning, and I'll never be out of work now that I've got an agent.
Yes. And then I did waitressing for, 4 years, I think. I was waitressing and being a maitre d' and a bartender and lots of hospo in that time.
Yeah. What were you doing to keep yourself sane? What sort of creative work were you doing? What was your acting outlet while you weren't actually getting roles? Were you writing, like script writing, improv stuff?
I was doing lots of improv, and that was really fun. And actually, when I was working at Tony's, I worked at the steak restaurant. That was when Hamish one day messaged me and was like, "Hey, my friends make this YouTube series. We're filming in the forest in Mount Wellington. Do you want to come? You just have to play my girlfriend." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And then
boom.
and then
boom.
The rest is
it is amazing.
History.
I'm not really a spiritual person. I don't really believe in the afterlife or anything like that. But one thing that I would love to be true is that when you die, you just get to kind of review parts of your life, like with a scrub bar, and you can be like, "Oh, I really want to watch that bit again." I'd love to just have those moments as like a highlight reel of being like, you have no idea, like right before that moment, and you go, you have no idea how much this is going to change your life.
Truly. And I just think, oh God, imagine if I was sick, or imagine if I was like, this sounds random, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I did it. And I remember
I'm busy because I've got a hospital shift today or whatever. Yeah,
Can you imagine?
The amount of stuff. Like I've always been very upfront with any sort of day job stuff that I had when I was pursuing acting, that like, hey, acting comes first. Oh, fair enough, but blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, nope. If there's something comes up, I'm acting's first. Like, if you need to fire me, then do it. But like, I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to do the thing that I'm loving, the thing that I'm going to pursue, because I need this shift. And obviously,
for being upfront about it,
It also comes from a place of privilege of like I've always been a very good saver. I've been sort of good with my economy. I didn't come from a wealthy family by any means. It was one of those situations where when you're like in your adult years and you're looking back on your childhood and your anecdotes and you're like, oh shit, did I grow up poor? You don't realize it at the time because your parents look after you so well, but like you go, oh wow, we were really frugal with money and stuff, and like, oh man, I was poorer than I realized I was a kid. But I've always been just like naturally frugal. I didn't have a lot of like frivolous interests and stuff. And so I had money, I had savings enough to allow me to make those decisions. I was never like eating hand to mouth or whatever to paycheck to paycheck sort of thing. So I was in a privileged position to tell people when I got a new job, just so you know, acting does come up every so often. I remember when I got a job as a tour guide at the zoo, they were like, that's okay, but like how often are we expecting that to be? And I was like, my last audition was about 4 months ago. and they're like, oh, so not often. I was like, not as often as I'd like, no.
Yeah, I will be here more than I want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always funny to be like, imagine if you just had to pass up the one role that does end up kicking off something like your connection to Viva because you were busy doing waitressing.
And I remember that day. It's so funny now to think about how lo-fi it was. Like I turned up and it was the guys in their cars and they had a different costume guy at that time. And he literally got out like a trunk of like maiden clothes and was like, I think this one will fit you. And then I like got changed next to the car and we walked through the forest. Tom was there. Tom and Hamish were obviously there. But that was it. It was just like Tom, this one props and costume guy. And we filmed it and it was so loose and so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't think they probably had any permits or anything.
No, God, no.
But then one guy was walking through and he was like, hey, I'm a really big fan of you guys. It's so awesome to meet you. And I was like, what the fuck? And
Fan of these guys?
Yeah, I was like,
what do you mean?
Is there a fan of these random YouTube dudes?
You're like, that's weird that they'd pay this guy to come up and pretend like that.
Yeah. I was like, these guys, what? They've got, I just remember being like, maybe this is more of a thing than I realize it is. But God, I just feel so lucky and Yeah,
I remember the first time that I filmed in the board episodes with them. So I was introduced to them for D&D stuff with a mutual friend who was like, oh, you guys, I think your Epic NPC stuff would translate to D&D really, really well, and it might be like a different avenue to explore, see if there's a market in it. And I happen to know this guy who's really good at Dungeons & Dragons, and he introduced us. So I knew them through that, and then they were like, oh, do you want to come and film this character on board? I was like, yeah, sure. And I think it was the locked out episode of Board where they literally didn't have access to the playtech that they used to film at for that weekend, because usually the playtech store was closed on a Sunday, I think it was, and the guy who owned it had like I think he was fans of theirs or something, and he allowed them to film on Sundays, which is very kind of him. But this particular weekend, they couldn't for whatever reason, but they were like, we still need to film something. So they just made a script about being in the car park and just made it like, Rowan forgets the keys one day and he still wants to do business. So the customer turns up, wanting headphones, and he like takes my money and then tells me that he'll give me the headphones later or something. But it was such a shoestring situation where I turned up and it was literally just the three of them and me, no camera guy. They had a camera between them, and then in that scene.
Oh wait, so the three of them took turns at being the camera operator.
In the script, they wrote Alan out of it very early. He turns up for work. Rowan goes, he's like, "What are you doing, Rowan?" Because he's just like this against the door. And he's like, "Can't get in." He's like, "All right, well, I'm going home then." There's a little back and forth, and then Alan leaves. And that was just logistically so that he could film the rest of it.
Amazing.
So Alan leaves right before I arrive. Oh, crazy coincidence. So I'm holding the camera, filming the entire start of it and showing them, is this good? Cool. And then he leaves, takes over, and I walk in and do my whole bit. And to think how far they've gone to like the biggest Kickstarter in New Zealand history, and they've got a freaking production studio with a staff that's, offices and an entire tavern set that's next door to a massive tech store set. Yeah, it's incredible how far they've come. I think when I started with them, their YouTube channel was on about, I think it was somewhere around 100,000 subscribers, and now they've just hit 7 million.
That's crazy.
So your first role was Frida, Fred's wife, Fred's suffering wife.
Yes.
Suffering wife who's also really not very nice. Like
she's awful.
Yeah, people think like, oh, Frida's putting up with a man like that. Like, yeah, but also she's not a nice person.
No, she's really mean, and that's the whole thing, is that if I'd known it was going to be a recurring character over many years, I maybe would have put some more thought into what she was like, because that first skit, she's so mean to him. Yeah, I would love to see her in the future, like, change. But I don't know.
Have some sort of an arc.
Yeah.
It's always interesting though, because like the nature of their skits and stuff is that it has to be like a standalone. You've never seen any of this before, and suddenly it comes across your Facebook feed, and so you're like, oh, this is funny.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's hard for them to ever have like through lines and stuff. They manage successfully with the Tech Town stuff, with the white shirt sagas and stuff like that.
Yeah, true.
And the recurring kind of Karen stuff as well, because they've got enough of a fandom now that they're like, even if it's not a properly standalone thing, enough people are going to know the context for it to still be successful.
Yes.
What was your next thing with them? You did the Frida thing, and then how long before they were like, hey, let's get her back?
I think it was Bored. I could be wrong with this, but I think it was, I came in for a day at Bored, and I did this skit, which was like, I just always have so much fun when I'm here, and I had so much fun filming this skit as this woman who was like dying, and she's buying things from the store, and Alan's doing it, and he just keeps saying all the wrong things.
And it's just like, I remember that because he's just like,
oh God,
blipping it, and it's just that's one of my favorites actually, because I can picture Alan's face as he's just like, oh, that's. And you're talking about how expensive your medicines are, and how expensive the hospital bills are, and all this stuff. And he's like, it's got declined again. Do you want to remove the mouse, maybe? Just subtracts it.
Yeah, so I think that was the next thing.
So dark.
It was so dark, but so fun. And I ruined a lot of takes by laughing, because he was being so funny.
It's hard not to. And I'm sure Alan ruined just as many. Everybody knows Alan as the corpser. Especially in the D&D green screen stuff. Very difficult to get through a green screen without Alan corpsing. There's quite funny how many green screen have somebody off screen been like, continue, we're using this take, keep going. just put it in because it's so funny. It's actually funnier to watch Alan trying not to laugh.
True. I love the green screens, because maybe what the fine folk don't realise is that the green screen happens after a day of playing D&D. It happens right at the end of the day, and so your brain is so fried.
Already mush.
Yeah. And so you just, I don't know, you feel really chaotic.
So we used to do it with the Adventures of Azrin. We used to film for an entire day. So we'd go just as much table session as we did with Misfits, and then go for lunch, and then come back when your brain is that mush and do it again in the evening for another full session, essentially. And so it's always funny, you can kind of watch, with it being cut into half-hour chunks, you can kind of see people's energy go like this, and then you can almost tell when they've had lunch because they go into a food coma, and then they get a little bit more energy back in the afternoon, and then it tapers off again as we get to like 5 p.m. And we're fucking exhausted because we've been on in front of a camera for 8 hours, which is absolutely exhausting. And then you can see when the next table session happens, the very next episode, and it's like, oh, hey, everybody, we're back in again. And then the same with the green screen. We'd then go back like several weeks later, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, and film the green screen of the table session. And so a lot of the green screen, and this was when I was actually in charge of it rather than director Ben, I was in charge of going through and deciding on all the green screens and kind of running it. And so most of those sessions were all of them, especially Ben, being like, what? What is this scene? I'll be like, don't just do what I'm telling you. You don't need to remember why. What did we fight? Ben seems to have this amnesia that hits him every time he finishes a game of D&D. Like, yeah, Van Leer, he's at the table and he plays Bob and he's so in the character and all this, and then he just all of it just gets his brain just drags the file into the recycle bin as soon as he's done, because he'll turn up to a green screen and be like, who is this character that we're meeting? I was like, the cloud giant that gave you the smoke powers. Smoke powers? What are you talking about? I don't remember this at all. So quite often the green screen used to just be like, don't worry, I know what I'm talking about. I know the context. Just do this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very grateful when we went to a half day of session green screen in the afternoon, so that at least things are fresher.
Yeah. And at least you don't have to think too much.
No, yeah, thankfully that's the case. I pushed real hard for that because they wanted to do it like the other way around for a while. They also wanted to do it like a half day followed by another half day of filming the next day, like split it into that and then do green screen. They were talking about all these different ways that are going to try and make it viable. And I was kind of the real contender against because there's the argument from like a producer money person standpoint of like, this is going to be the most efficient because we can hire people for a full day, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, it might be the most efficient, but it's not going to give you the best quality stuff because I can tell you it's not fun to do that and it doesn't get the best performances and people are exhausted and all this. So we finally found something that worked for everybody. So go on, yeah.
Do you know if there will be a season 2
of
Tale of the
Tales of the
Misfits?
Misfits? A lot of people have been calling out for it, that's for sure. A lot of the fans have been really, really hoping for it. And obviously we left off in a way that could. I deliberately made sure to finish it in a way that could lend itself to future stories. I'm not sure.
I hope that we do, because I feel like I just learned how to play. Do you know what I mean? By the end of the last session, I was like, I get it, and I don't have to I only spend a few seconds scrolling through the pages. I kind of know. Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it's a season 2 of Tales of the Misfits, regardless of that, I think it's almost guaranteed that we'd see you again at the table in some capacity because we're going to be continuing with D&D, even if it's not Misfits, because we've got the Adventures of Azurim, which is closing up now. Tales of the Misfits had a really successful run. We're going to more of a model of shorter campaigns like Misfits now. We're going to like 6-session campaigns that we film all at once. So we've got the cast for that sorted for this next one. And an idea of what's going to happen in it and what's the story and things. It's going to be a very interesting challenge for me because instead of being like, here's a table session and then I've got 6 weeks to plan for the next one and think about all the ways that you kind of surprised me in that last one and like, oh, cool, that's an interesting direction. Let's go that way and let me change this thing or whatever. Change my pacing because we didn't quite get as far as I wanted to or whatever. And now we're going film on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I've got like the afternoon and evening to plan the next table session.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting challenge, but it means that I've had to just approach it from a slightly more linear storytelling aspect than open world sandbox kind of thing of like, instead of being like, what do you want to do? It's going to be like, this is the setting and this is kind of the story we're going to tell so that everybody going into it knows like this is the general kind of hero's journey here. And we're all creators, we're all actors, we know stuff about storytelling, we know like how to make a character arc and where it's going to be satisfying and things.
Yeah.
So it just means that it allows us to put a little limitation on like character creation so that it's like, okay, let's make cohesive party members so that we don't waste any time going, why should I travel with you and all this? And then let's tell this particular story in this particular part of the world. There's obviously still going to be like plenty of room for play and mucking about within that. But it's going to have like a direction to it.
Yeah, cool.
And then once that's done, get new cast, new part of the world, new characters. Maybe at some point people start calling out to see return characters. And with it all being in the same world, sort of cinematic universe style, there's always a chance that it's like, we're doing this mini-series and then, oh, where are they going? Oh, they're down to they find themselves at a fighting arena down in the Evelyn Forest and it's set in the past. So like, who do they bump into? Oh, look, Horatio's here.
Would love that.
Yeah, like little guest stars and appearances and things. There's always a chance of things like that. It's one of the best parts about having a world where all the stories are interwoven. You get like these little Easter eggs that can. It still doesn't distract it from being like a standalone thing. You can watch. The idea is you can watch Tales of the Misfits without watching Azurim, without watching Adventures of Azurim.
You do such a great job at that, like keeping track of the entire world, like keeping track of all of the locations and the history and what's happened. And I don't know how you do it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really just because it's one of my autistic hyperfocuses. I think it's just one of my like, oh, let's do this. I think it's just because I really enjoy it. It's an extra challenge is that normally the DM would be the arbiter of the world, like the world builder, like come up with all of the lore and the different settings and stuff. So they already know a lot about it because they came up with it. Whereas the challenge for me is I'm playing and telling stories in the Viva's world of Azerim.
Yes.
I didn't create it. I'm not the world builder for it. I'm not the one who has final say in like what towns are called and what places, what things are going on and what stories are going on. So Adam is that. So I'm I'm always going to Adam to be like, all right, tell me everything you know about the Darklands, or tell me everything you know about Schmagenrog, because the characters might be going there or whatever. So he sends through his stuff. I'm like, cool. Any gaps in this, I'm just going to flesh out. You cool with that? And he's like, yeah. And I run things by him sometimes, names and stuff. Other things I just kind of throw at them at the table and he doesn't see it until it happens. Other things I make canon and Alan is like, oh no, that's not canon. Like the plague in Wraith that kind of took out the entire city.
Right.
He'd anticipated it being like just kind of like a disease plague. But I had it more of a plague of the mind that reduces people's inhibitions, and so they just started like gambling away all of their savings and just fucking in the streets and like drinking and drugs, and just like this thing that kind of collapsed society rather than like killed everybody.
Gotcha.
Because it tied in better with the story of the Dark Lord's influence and stuff. The Dark Lords are corrupting people rather than killing people. And he was like, the orgy plague's not canon. And yet I keep introducing, I keep using it in every single story that I ever talk about Wraith. It's always the orgy plague. It's like, well, sorry, I've made it canon.
It's canon now.
Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge, even more so because the D&D channel is, I have to keep reminding myself, their second channel. It's their sort of side project.
Yeah,
their main
true.
channel's got 7 million subscribers. The D&D channel has 500,000. And so everything that they ever do that's in that world, like the dev logic stuff, is about the video game that everything's set in. The Epic NPC Man, it's all about that setting. So anytime that they make a thing like that, it's like, oh well, technically that's canon now as well.
True.
The Hero Outage comic book was set in that world. The new Balin's fishing game that they've created, that's all set in that world. So I have to try and stay on top of that. I'm like, okay, can I introduce like little elements of this or Easter eggs from this video game, characters they've created or whatever?
It's
a lot, but thankfully it's something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, right. So how did you get involved with Tales of the Misfits?
I heard about it first from, I think Britt and Ali were talking to me like, oh, we're asking Rob and we're hoping that we can do a girls D&D. And I was like, I would love that. And that's how I heard about it first. And then, yeah, we had the sessions with you. And I kind of thought, D&D, just a bit of playing, just a bit of fun. And then I remember we had that meeting with you upstairs and you were like, okay, like let's talk through all of these different things. Are you comfortable talking about sexual assault? How do we feel about racism? And I was like, oh, this is quite serious.
It can be.
Yeah, which is great because obviously you're so experienced and it would be so awful to be in the position where you're like going down a dark storyline and someone gets triggered or upset.
Exactly.
But I think, yeah, so I heard about it first from the girls and then we met you and we had that initial session and we were kind of brainstorming what the characters could be.
Yeah, I think it's very important to go through like a session 0, and part of that is going through consent list of like what topics are on the table, are not on the table for the purposes of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because there are many people in the D&D sort of creator sphere who would take a hardline stance of like, why would you ever try to explore the themes of like sexual assault or like child abuse or any of that sort of thing in a role-playing game? They're meant to be fun, they're meant to be escapism and stuff, and I think that's a reductive look on what they can be. And I think you should never do that with people who aren't all on board with doing that, but I think that you're removing the potentially therapeutic aspects of exploring those things in a safe space where you are all with friends who are deliberately telling stories together.
Yeah.
I've never taken a hard stance of like anything is by default off the table in a story. But it is off the table if somebody at the table says it's off the table, which is why you need to have those conversations, open and honest conversations before you start the thing. I always ask them, what sort of a tone are we going for with this thing? Is it like silly slapstick where nothing really matters and you can make up stupid names for your characters and whatever else? Or is it like super gritty, realistic drama, verisimilitude and all this?
What did we decide? Because ours ended up being quite dramatic.
Yeah, there was definitely elements of it. I was talking with, I think it was Britt recently about this. I think like I tend to, when I'm asking these things nowadays, I tend to put it on like a 0 to 20 scale because it's kind of like a D20. You can visualize it that way of like, did you roll a 4 for your tone? And so you're really silly and all this. I think the Adventures of Azrim, I'd put probably at a tone of about 3 or so, like really down the silly end. With silly names and slapstick and all that stuff. I think Tales of the Misfits had moments of being up around like 16, but for the average, I think probably somewhere around 12 out of 20, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely lots of elements of it, and I think that's great for comedy as well. Like even sitcoms, even Friends, and Seinfeld and stuff have moments of real poignancy of
Totally.
like where you can allow for a particular moment to sit in its actual drama. And then, like, bring it out with, like, a moment of levity. It makes the comedy even funnier sometimes.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, so we went through that stuff, went through the session zeros, talked about, like, because it's not all about child abuse and sexual assault and stuff. It's like spiders. Are you okay with spiders? Are you okay with your character ever being, like, buried alive or, like, being tortured or frozen? Or have you got a particular thing about tornadoes because you lost your family in a tornado, and there's things that you just don't necessarily know, and so you say, hey, is there anything that's going to be really off-putting to you that you don't want to explore as a story? And that's the thing that I always try to make a big distinction of when I'm doing those session zeros. I'm like, this is not about whether you object to them. Obviously we object to child abuse.
Yes.
I would hope to never play a game with somebody who doesn't in real life object to child abuse. But it's about whether you would object to it being used as a plot-telling device. And there are levels to that as well. I always ask for like an A to D sort of a level. Like A on my consent forms is like, I'm okay with this being included in whatever capacity it needs to be. B is like, I'm okay with it being included as long as it's not happening to my character. C is like, I'm okay with it being included as long as it's kind of veiled or off-screen. It's alluded to that maybe we hear about a hag stealing children, and we're kind of veiling or hinting at why she's stealing the children or what's happening to the children. That's fine, but we're not really going to explore it. When we go to the hag's house, we're not going to see dead children or whatever. And then D is like, hardline, I don't want it to even be alluded to, sort of thing.
Yep.
And at which point I look at that in my preparation for my games, and I go, all right, well, we've got a hard line on child abuse or violence towards children or whatever like that. Then I'm like, cool. So the hag is going to be maybe that she's torturing animals instead. Let's have a look. Everybody said no. So I've got a hard line against animal abuse or anything. Cool. So the hag is, and I'll come up with some other reason for like a plot hook for the hag. The hag is trying to manipulate the town by poisoning the well. Is there anything to do with poison or like dehydration? Because that's another one of the things on my list. I'm like, no, everybody's cool with that kind of a thing, that kind of a topic being explored. Cool, I'll use that. It's just a way of making sure that the topics we're exploring in the game are never over anybody's line. And sometimes those lines are crossed without you even realizing it. Sometimes you don't know that you had a line until it's being explored at the table.
Yep.
And so having those safety measures in place where everybody knows that they are safe to, at any point, for any reason, stop a scene and be like, throw up an X or touch an X card or just say like red light or message somebody privately, whatever the safety tool is, to be like, this is triggering me. Maybe it wasn't on your consent form because it wasn't an issue at the time, but since then, you and your wife split up, or you lost your dad in a car accident or something, and suddenly something's touching something that like, oh, normally I'd be okay with us exploring this. Can we just make it a bit more lighthearted today? Or can we move on from this particular scene or reword that choice? Or, and you can retcon it. You can go back and be like, that's fine. Let's okay, the guy doesn't say that. He says this instead, blah, blah, blah.
Totally.
It's a collaborative storytelling, and I see it more of like a writer's room sometimes, of going like, here's an idea of where the scene could go. Cool, you're all on board with that. Let's, give me other ideas and let's flesh this scene out together. Speaking of writers' rooms, have you been involved with the Viva stuff? Like, have you submitted scripts before, or like been involved in the writing?
Yes, I've done some board scripts, and I've done like Office Logic or Wildcard scripts as well.
Nice.
So nothing.
Which ones would people know?
Oh my gosh, I did one about gift shopping where a clueless boyfriend comes in to buy gifts, and I don't know if this is out yet. And Britt's
I mean, it might be by the time this is out.
Yeah, true. Britt's character gets frustrated trying to help him, and then I did one with a naughty child. So a mum comes in with her child who's misbehaving.
Yeah.
Is that out
Boys
yet?
will be boys sort of
Yeah,
thing.
boys
And
will
then
be boys.
I think Rowan ends up just like
Oh,
ejecting
so
him or
that's
something.
Aiden.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted, in the script, I didn't write like Pokemon, but I wanted it to be like Team Rocket. Like I wanted like Rowan to like kick the child and it goes ding, ding. Yeah. So I hope that's
funny.
in there.
It didn't stay to that degree, but we do get a shot of. I don't know if did you ever see Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yes.
Yeah, and whenever Uncle Phil ejects Jazz, what was his name? Jazzy J or something. Yeah, just and you get that cut of him going. Ah!
Yeah.
They've basically got that in board now as kind of a recurring thing whenever Rowan ejects somebody from the tech town.
Awesome. What else? I did some Office Logic ones. I can't remember. I've got some. Oh, I have one coming out soon about big drink bottles because I have a big drink bottle and I bought this into the writers' room and everyone was like, "Whoa, what's with the huge drink bottle?" And I was like, "This is a scene."
We can write this down. I do the same with D&D Logic. Like when they were like, "Oh, let's greenlight this D&D Logic idea." Suddenly, from that point on, anytime I was playing D&D, anytime something would happen that somebody would make a joke of, I'd be like, just write that into the ideas document. See?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. I reckon.
You've got ideas galore.
Yeah.
Like we just did the writers' room for season 3 D&D Logic, which I was very excited about because there's all sorts of cool new ideas happening and things. I started writing my 2 scripts for that one yesterday. So it's exciting, but I was looking at my list and I was like, man, this could go on to like season 12. Like I've got so many ideas still.
Yeah.
We're never going to run out of ideas for D&D.
That's good. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, for sure. So your Tales of the Misfits stuff started with like just kind of hearing about it through Britt and Ellie, you say?
Yeah.
I think the guys, we put that as a stretch goal for the Kickstarter that they were doing of like, if we do it, we'll get an all-ladies campaign. I think after that there was talk of like, all right, which ladies are going to be involved, and I think they listed like 6 to 8 different people that it could be, and we were talking through them. My argument was that we should do like an audition almost process of like make sure that everybody's got chemistry at the table, make sure it's going to be fun, make sure everybody isn't going to be like hogging the limelight or whatever. It's a collaborative storytelling. Make sure people have got good improv chops so that they know how to sort of bounce off each other and come up with ideas. And then I think for budgetary or time reasons, they were just like, no, let's just go with these 4. And I was like, well, let's hope that they're not terrible players then. And they were, so.
Yeah.
No, it was really lucky in that respect that it ended up being such a good group that bonded so well and made characters that worked together really well. And
Yes. I felt, when we started, I felt a bit embarrassed because you film the session so far in advance and then they get released onto YouTube. And I remember I was like reading the comments here. I was like, why is Ree talking in her accent all the time? And I was like, no,
I can't change that now.
I know. And it's so, and I didn't realize I was doing that. I was just having fun. And I was like, God, it's so annoying. You watch 40, you know what I mean? You watch so much of me talking in this absolutely butchered Southern accent. But you're like, you live and you learn.
I remember at one point you like stopped. I don't think it made it into the cut, but I think you stopped and asked Britt. You were like, "This isn't offensive, is it?" Like, I'm not like taking the piss out of Southern gentlemen or whatever. And she's like, "No, I don't think so. I think it's like endearing, if anything. You're endearing the best qualities of a Southern gentleman, like the very charming gentleman and the chivalrous, very much a chivalrous person of looking out for their party, especially their lady friends."
Yes.
Yeah. How did let's talk character. How did, once you were accepted into like, oh, let's go with Ree for one of the characters, and we started the session 0 process, how did the character come about?
Well, I knew that I wanted to like be something with like a big awesome costume.
Yeah.
And so
which you definitely wouldn't regret later.
No, filming in like 30-degree heat. But my original character that I wanted was a Pegasus. And so
A Pegasus by the name
of Hanky Panky Yankee Doodle, a very silly name. And
this is what I'm talking about, where Tone was like, oh, this is going to be silly. Sneaky Minaj and Hanky Panky Yankee Doodle and Booble Boo Bubble Butt. And I was like, okay, we're going for silly, stupid tones. And then later on it cuts to fucking Sneaky like losing her sister and saying goodbye, and Arrow being killed and sacrificing herself.
yes,
So
yeah.
It's where the one of the D&D Logic episodes of season 2, I think it was, came about. The idea for that I had was like when somebody makes a stupid character and then you get super attached to it. So Alan plays Poop McDinglefart.
Oh, I love that sketch. Is that where he's hanging off the poop?
I am Poop McDinglefart. Yeah. And he's like, you're going to ruin this campaign. And then boom, hard cut to, no, Poop, you're the best of us. You have to go on without me, friend. And he's hanging into the volcano.
Love that sketch. It's so funny.
That's the sort of idea that I was getting at with that. The idea of that was like, making a character that's Hanky Panky Yangadoodle or Sneaky Minaj, and then it turns out that they're actually you get super invested in their actual story.
Yes, yeah. But yes, I wanted to be a Pegasus. Apparently it was, impractical to build a big horse costume behind me. And so
it was again, goes back to what I was saying about the contention between like what I want to happen for D&D and what the producers say, no, we don't have the budget for that. Because we are making a show after all, and we do have to worry about return on investment.
Yeah.
So at the session 0, I was like, anything goes, whatever you want. Phoenix is like, I'm going to be an inch tall. And you're going to be like, I'm going to be 12 feet tall with a massive wing. And the go-to phrase for Hanky Panky, you remember? It was when I was describing, I was like, oh, what do you look like? Or how big are you? Or whatever. Or how big's your wingspan?
What was it? I'm as big as a...
Think of the biggest horse you ever seen. Now double it.
Double it. That's right.
And then it was, how big's your wingspan? And you'd be like, picture the biggest wingspan you ever seen. Now double it. It was like, I think you kicked somebody in the session 0 because I was like improvising something to give you guys the feel for what it would go like. I think you were at a wedding and you like flew down to like stop the wedding and you slammed into the wedding cake. And you talked about your hoof going into the cake. I was like, how big are your hooves? And you're like, picture the biggest hooves you ever seen.
Double it. Yeah.
And I was like, yes, absolutely, let's go. And then afterwards they were like, so practically speaking, how are we gonna do this? Because I was also like, so do we want to be like Centaur but with wings, so you've still got hands? And you were like, no, I don't. I was like, you're a bard. You're not going to be able to play any musical instruments. We'll just do like your bardic inspiration comes from your own charm, or like flicking your mane or whatever. Yes. That's fine. You realize that you're going to be size category large, which means you're not going to be like able to get into houses and stuff. And we were like, yeah. During the session 0, you're like, I'm going to put my head through into buildings whenever they're exploring dungeons. I'm just going to be like squeezing through the halls. And we were all on board with this, how ridiculous it was going to be for the D&D aspect of it. But then from the filming it aspect of it, they were like, this is unfeasible.
Yes. And then I think, did you have the idea for a Minotaur?
So I was like, I remember being really upset because I was like, don't stifle my creative juices. Like, I feel like I don't have the control that I would normally have over a D&D game, being like, absolutely, whatever you want to do, I'm going to work with you to make sure you're having a good time. You want to play this, I'll make it work. There's no game mechanics for it, I'll make it work. I took the Centaur stat block, I took away anything to do with their opposable thumbs, and I gave it a fly speed, and that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, cool, I'll make it work. If that's what you want to play, if that's the best way for me to facilitate your fun, that's kind of my overarching filter that I look through any D&D choices through. It's like, how do I make my players feel like they're having the best time?
And we did have the best time.
And you did. So when they came back and said, look, logistically, we need to veto this Pegasus, they tried vetoing the fairy as well, and I was like, absolutely not. I will adjust it so that it can work in the green screen by saying that she wants to be this tall. I'm going to say that she can be this tall, but she can also at will turn herself into like hobbit-sized, size category small, so that we can always just assume like, oh, whenever you see her in the green screen, she's just hobbit-sized. Yeah. Because thankfully Phoenix is hobbit-sized.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that like some businesses are like sales, figures, and this business is like, we need to talk about this Pegasus. It's not feasible.
It's just not feasible. This Pegasus, because I remember being like, put her in a like a $2 shop like horse mane headband or something that's got like a horse mane on it, and put her in fairy wings that you can get, and people will just accept it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I cheekily pushed back in my own little way of going like, all right, you're not going to allow it as a playable character. I'm going to include it as an NPC that they come across in the game, so that I'm forced to wear the costume that you refuse to make. So it was a little bit of an ass move of me, I'm sure. But it was very funny to force me to then play as Hanky Panky Yankee Doodle in the most revealing of tight costumes.
You had some very revealing costumes. The one that I loved all of your costumes, but the one that I hated was oh my god, the no.
What can I do to make you have fun?
It was so scary.
Mr. Light at the Witchlight Carnival.
Yeah.
Are you not having fun?
And then you just like jumping on the Ferris wheel and just eating the popcorn. Have you got any more popcorn?
Yeah, absolutely. I can get you more popcorn.
Yeah, he's a great character. I love that guy.
Yeah.
So they kind of vetoed that. I understood it. Like I was like, fine, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. I was like, what serves the same sort of feeling? And I went through all the different like animal races and the bull race, the minotaurs, and I went through the centaurs, and I kind of pitched to them and was like, look, this is this and this is this, and these are the sorts of things they can do. Like which one feels like it's still giving the same vibe, giving the same backstory and stuff. And you chose Minotaur, and I was like, cool. So we tweaked the backstory you'd given me a little bit. It was still like you'd worked in I think Hanky Panky was still like something to do with the Southern Gentleman, and definitely something to do with like a fighting ring. No, I don't think they were fighting ring. They were just, what was it? I've got your backstory written somewhere.
Yeah.
It was like you were like a traveling bard that had been given the ability to speak. I think it was a Pegasus that had been given the ability to speak after saving a family or something. I remember there being like you saved a father and son from like orcs in the mountains. So you were going to be like orc fighter, and we just kind of switched that a little bit once you decided on Horatio. You switched to being like a cage fighter or a gladiator ring fighter instead. But everything else kind of stayed the same.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of backstory, actually, so with the other ladies at the table, they'd all kind of they'd explained to me part of the same sort of session zero, and the questionnaires I asked people is like, how interested are you in sort of backstory versus forestory? Like, are you the sort of person who creates a character that you really want to flesh out and you really want to explore everything to do with how they got to be where they are? Or are you more the sort of person who's like, I got to be where I am for whatever reasons, I'm an adventurer now, I'm more interested in what I'm doing from this point. And the other ladies had kind of given me this impression of like, would love to explore the character and like Sneaky's whole backstory with her sister. We wanted to explore that. Britt really wanted to explore the relationship with her brother and how she became a vampire and all that things. Bublé gave me this huge thing of like, I don't know who my patron is. I don't know where I'm getting these genie powers from. And so I'd love to explore that and discover that. Whereas you were like, came from a fighting ring, not really that bothered about exploring it. Was there a reason for that, or was there ever any regret about that, like that we didn't get really to explore Horatio's backstory?
No, I don't think there was any regret. I think I was nervous that I didn't understand how much backstory was too much. I was nervous that I would forget things. I think I was so worried about getting it wrong. I was like, well, if I don't really have a really fleshed out backstory, then I can't get it wrong. And I don't regret it, but I think now if we were to play another game, I would want to do I would love to do a healer.
Right.
Oh, we really suck.
You really needed a healer.
I would love to play something like really grounded and really serious and have a really detailed backstory, because I don't look back and go, oh, I wish I had a more fleshed out backstory, but I do look back and think, oh, it was so cool that we got to kind of visit the backstory of the other three girls. Yeah. And so,
because some of the comments did start coming through, especially towards the end of the campaign, being like, oh, they can't be ending because we've not really seen Horatio's thing, and we've clearly seen the others. And I had to tell people, because I do behind the scenes watch party every week of like the latest episode, and I pause it and talk about these sorts of decisions. And I had to tell my fans quite often, like, that was a choice that was made. Like, told me that she wasn't really as interested in in exploring that. So I hinted at it, like I included Bug because I didn't want to just be like, we get everything about everybody else and nothing about Horatio. I still wanted something. So I introduced Bug and like explained who he was to you, and then when you went down to Amon Almuta, I hinted at the fact that he was that down in Iwilin there was also a fighting ring somewhere. I also hinted at like the fact that the Bonecaller, like some of his army was coming from buying the dead gladiators and stuff like that.
And I enjoyed all that stuff. It was really fun.
It's just that we never went there and actually met those people and dealt with those things like in person and stuff.
I think before we started, I was like, no, it's going to, like, in the moment is going to be the most fun part of it for me, because I love improv so much. But now I'm like, oh, I could have still enjoyed all of the in the moment things and also had a more fleshed out backstory.
Yeah, and that's something that you learn, isn't it? Like that's one of the things I encounter quite often when I'm doing those session zeros, and I'm asking all these things of like, how much combat do you like? How dangerous do you want your combat to be? How much role play and exploration and puzzles and mini games and things. Often, if it's a new player, they go, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I like. I don't know what I like until I do it. And then in the next campaign, I'll be like, I want to try something more in this area or less in this area. So what was your? So you had Horatio lined up. What was your the next stage of the process? It was just filming. Like, did you have any kind of do you remember any introduction to how the hell to play D&D? How to actually use the character sheet and how to use the dice and.
Yes, I remember you explaining it to us and being very patient with us. But I think the thing that tripped me up is that I got it by the end of it, but I was like, okay, so I get an action and then what happens and then what happens. We were kind of, due to time constraints and all the rest of it, I feel like we were chucked in the deep end, which was great. But I wonder if it was frustrating to watch because you see us figuring out how to play.
Well, the thing, so I know that there's a lot of like anxiety of like, oh, am I taking up space? And like, am I frustrating to watch? And I used to have a lot of that as well. Like I used to get really frustrated that every session with the guys, I'd have to be reminding them how to frickin' play D&D. After 5 years playing together, they still like asking me, which dice am I rolling? But one of my friends and fan who became a friend once told me, she was like, it makes your stuff really accessible over a lot of other actual plays that are out on the internet. One of our unique selling points is, we've got a few because it's like we do half-hour content, so it's much more bingeable. We do the green screen cutaways, which is something a little bit more unique to us. And then also just like I particularly am much more patient with explaining things over and over again, which means that any episode that somebody tunes into, if it's their first exposure to anything D&D, they get to follow along as well. They're not completely lost in like, what are they doing? Why is he rolling? What's he adding? Why? He said he rolled a 19, so it's a 25. Why is it a 19, 25? What's like all that stuff? It's a little bit more explained, a little bit more easy to follow and jump into. And I think it's one of the reasons why I get so many messages every day just from like complete perfect strangers. And I always love it when I get people from just like Lithuania has reached out and been like, hey, I love your work. And I'm like, this is crazy that there's people all over the world that like go out of their way to reach out and say how much they appreciate my work. But a lot of the things that people often tell me is like, I got into D&D because of you, because I could finally understand what it is. I finally understood that it's like not a board game, that it's not like winning conditions, that it's storytelling, and you just have like parameters to your story, parameters to your character, and I finally could understand how to play, and it seemed you make it look so fun, and all this, and you explain all the rules and why you use certain rules, because I house rule so much stuff at my table. Like it's like this weird Frankenstein's monster of D&D, which is like, oh, it's mostly D&D, but this part isn't. This is just Rob rules, and this is because I just change things to make my games just feel better for me and my players.
Cool.
And so because I'm changing all those rules, I'm making a point of like explaining them when I'm saying it. I'm like, oh yeah, I know rules is written, you make a death save on a 10, it's a success. In my games, it's a 10 is a failure, because then it's a 50-50 chance of either you fail or you succeed, rather than a 45% chance you fail and a 55% you succeed.
Yeah, true.
So all those little things so that's something that helps me not worry that it's like, oh, is this taking too much time? Is this boring to watch?
Yeah, I guess it does make it more accessible. One thing I learned pretty quick, and I was like, aha, is I was like, oh, my actions have consequences. Like, I just can't go in there and be completely chaotic. It is like the real world that my actions have consequences, and if I do something wild, it will bite me in the butt.
I tend to run my games that way, because the way that I see it, I as the dungeon master am quite often like the straight man in an improvisation sense of like, I will bring the serious, like verisimilitude, the realism of the world, and you can be as chaotic and fun as you want and stuff, and then comedy works because the craziness is acting off of somebody who's playing it straight. And I think that my job is often as the NPCs is to sort of play it straight, play the realistic nature. Even if I'm playing like a hello, da 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 da, like I'm still playing the realistic nature of this character and like who he is and how he would react and the real consequences of what you do if you try and snap his staff over his knee and all this. And so it's always like it's the player's job to be like bring the comedy and bring the ridiculous rug pull sort of situations.
Yes.
And it's my job to sort of bring but remember, that thing has consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was fun.
What was your sort of highlights and lowlights of playing?
My highlights were having this is so broad, but having fun. I'm trying to think of particular moments throughout the campaign, but like...
You'd enjoy yourself while you're actually playing, like you're actually filming. Like the fun was
and I enjoyed being in danger.
Right.
Like I liked when we were all of us like, no! My favourite part was the big battle where it was like, how are we ever going to win this? When the big pirate ship came in. Yeah, and there was like, we had the werewolf and we had the... That was I loved doing that battle. And I think I really like battles.
Yeah, it seems it. You like the combat, which is great. It's always good stuff to learn about yourself, because then when you go into another session 0 with me and I go like, so on a scale of 0 to 20, what tone do we want? How much? Because I always ask 2 different things when it comes to battles and stuff. I say, how much combat do you want? Like, how frequent do you want combat to be? Do you want it to be sort of like the old school dungeon crawl way of doing Dungeons and Dragons, which was like, oh, you go into a tomb and you clear it out and there's goblins in this room, and then you loot it and you go into the next room and there's an ooze and you got to kill the ooze, and then you maybe take a short rest and then you go into the next room and there's a vampire and it's just like fight, loot, go back to the town, use the loot to upgrade your weapons, go and find another dungeon, fight, loot. So do you want lots of combat? Or do you want like combat to be like, I'm like some players genuinely put like a 1 on that scale, because they're like, I would be perfectly happy if the entire campaign just didn't have any fighting. Yeah. And then the other thing I ask about combat is, how dangerous do you want things to be? Which is not necessarily just combat either. It's like how much do I have to? How many dice am I rolling if you fall off of a ledge? Like sometimes it's stuff like that, and like, am I setting my traps to be really deadly or am I not? Because some people really like the idea of like, when there is a combat, I want it to feel like there's a genuine, real chance that my character could die. That's what I liked, and I didn't know that I liked that. Right. Like, obviously it was so devastating when Arrow died, but I was also like, wow, like there's, it's dangerous, and I like that. So I loved the battles. And I think it was just such a perfect way out. Oh, God. Yeah. And I got a bit of flack in the comments for being like, that's not how death saves work. She should have been making death saves underwater. And I was like, yeah, but don't let the mechanics get in the way of the story. Yeah. Like, she just drowned to sacrifice herself in order to drown the main antagonist of her story so that she could save her brother. It was a perfect moment. And then I was already like, do I allow it to make death saves and stuff? So I was like, okay, roll a die, and if it's an odd number, I'll allow you to take death saves, and if it's an even, you just drown, or vice versa, I think it was. And then she rolled a nat 1, and I was like, okay, the dice are with me on this. The dice are telling me, because that, even if it was death saves, a nat 1 is 2 failed death saves in 1, and if you get 3, you die. Right. So it's like, it's already 2 failed death saves. You're going to argue with me over 1 failed death save for the sake of the story? Like, the story was more poetic and beautiful that she's spent her whole time, like the last 7 years as a vampire against her will, hating it, hating the fact that she's in this limbo between life and death. We have this beautiful moment where Phoenix's culmination of her story, the Sneaky's sort of character arc, finally finishes with her accepting that her sister's dead and moved on, and her sister having this beautiful moment in the afterlife. She points her to Arrow and says, there are other people who are still struggling that you need to help more than me. And so Phoenix chooses to have Sneaky use the wish to save Arrow's life and bring her back to this state of mortality. And then that mortality ends up kicking her in the ass by the fact that she can't breathe underwater anymore. Yeah, so it was just this beautiful combination of like, oh no, she's mortal again. She's not had much time to actually explore the enjoyment of being mortal again, but she chooses to end that to save her brother because that's more important to her.
Yeah.
And killing the werewolf who's immune to all this like non-magical damage because he's a werewolf, in the only way that makes sense to just drop him to 0 immediately. Boof.
Yeah.
Which on top of all of how beautiful it is already, is even more beautiful when you consider the fact that he's a pirate captain and she was like part of his indentured crew, and it's like he's drowning. Like what a perfect way to go out.
Yeah.
I just love the beauty that D&D stories can tell sometimes.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And yeah, I watched back the last, for prepping for this, I was like, I'll watch back a bit of our campaign. And then I watched the last episode and I was like, oh, I wish I had watched that. It's so sad. It was such a sad day.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like, we've done. Yay, that's a wrap. Go team. It was more like, oh, God.
Yeah.
We're all so sad.
Did you ever have on like film sets and things as well, when you're an actor and you're doing a film or like a long production, and then it gets to like the wrap day, and then you just have that like, oh, it's all changed. Like did you ever have that like melancholy of like the feeling of like it's over?
Yeah, I think because any time I've been on any big productions, I've really only had day player roles, or like small recurring roles. I haven't had that experience, and so our campaign was the first time I experienced that, and I was like, oh, it's and I guess because it didn't feel like, to me, it felt like, oh, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like, yes, we've had years of this, and it's a good time to lay it to rest, you know?
Like there's so many more stories to tell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of hinting at with the way that I ended it in that final monologue, was like, you know, people will come from miles around to hear the tales of the Misfits. Like, what will they be doing next, sort of thing. And I was trying to set up for you guys to show up in the final fight with the guys campaign, because this is probably going out before that's officially finished, but so I won't spoil things. But they have this big final sort of epic, and the chance for a sort of big epic endgame moment, like Avengers Endgame. Everybody, like all of the characters, turn up to all fight together, kind of thing. There was an opportunity for that, and I was like, logistically, nightmare. Logistically, a nightmare to have like 8 people playing at the table or whatever.
How many people can you have?
Yeah, as many as you want, theoretically.
Right.
I've run a Dungeons and Dragons game for like a school holiday program with like 30 kids at one point, and yeah, it was. I was co-DMing with a friend, Dead Aussie Gamer. Shout out Dead Aussie Gamer, over in Western Australia, and he runs this like government-funded thing. So he's technically a governmental employee who does Dungeons and Dragons, which is pretty dope. But yeah, he runs this like school holiday kids program thing. And there was like 30 kids, and the two of us were sort of just running this story together, and they'd be sitting at their like school table sort of thing, and I'd be like, all right, what are you going to do? Boom, moving along nice and quick, and they'd be rolling stuff, and we'd just be focused on keeping it going, keeping it moving, blah, blah, blah. We'd split them up at certain points to be like, you get to a tower, and they're like, all right, how many of us can fly? We've got 4. All right, so you flying people, you're going to go up to try and get in from the top. How many barbarians or fighters or melee people have we got? All right, you guys are going to try and bust down the door and go in here. And they'd almost be kind of playing this collective character, almost like, is it like grouping them off into the party dynamics, without actually doing it explicitly that way. It was almost like we were going like, you guys are playing the healers. Yes. So the healing party is going to go and try and keep the fighting party alive. And it was fun, but it was chaotic and a very different experience. Yeah. And on the other end of the scale, I've seen people play Dungeons and Dragons with a single person, like a solo player, or even 0 people, technically speaking. Like I run a game on my Twitch channel called Twitch Tales, where there's no players. It's just me dungeon mastering, and the chat are hive mind controlling the actions of the main character.
That's fun.
So they have a character. They've got a character sheet on the overlay of the screen, and as we're playing the chat, like to simplify it, if I go like, oh, do you want to go left or right? People in the chat can go left, right, and I can see most of you are wanting to go left, so the character goes left, and they see this thing, and you meet this guy. What do you want to say? And then if people put it in quotation marks in the chat, I'll read it out in character. So you say this to them, which sometimes leads to people going, no, don't say that. Oh, we shouldn't have said.
Yeah,
oh God, no, we shouldn't have said that. And it's like, well, they said it. It's canon.
Someone said it. Yeah.
So it's a fun experience.
That's
so
great.
you can play with as many people as you want. I think the sweet spot really for me lies in four players. I think it's just enough time for everybody to have like a limelight during a session, everybody to have like a moment, but there's also enough like backup for each other. Because in smaller and smaller party sizes, you've really got to be careful about balance, because one single crit from a bad guy, or like an effect that blinds you for a round, so much more debilitating if you're the only person in the party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered or done this? I think potentially because we were learning and we were also so concerned about getting it wrong or falling into a trap, we would take so long for our turns. Have you ever had like a little timer or something?
I don't do that because I think it's just kind of a dick move. Like,
Right.
as I said before, like the filter that I look through D&D decisions through is like, are my players having fun, and how can I make them have more fun? And I don't feel that's a good way to make them have more fun.
True.
I don't feel like, like to a degree, there are, if it's one person that is taking forever on every freaking turn, then the other players are going to have more fun if I do speed that guy up. But generally speaking, if everybody's struggling, that's kind of on me to help them out. If people aren't knowing what the hell they want to do, then I'm probably not doing a good enough job of explaining what their options are.
Right.
Or maybe I'm doing too good of a job of explaining too many options, and they're going, I've got choice paralysis.
Yeah.
I don't try and put extra pressure and anxiety on a player to be like, what do you want to do? I have considered, I do sometimes heavily hint what they'll do if they start to really struggle. I'll be like, maybe you do this, or maybe you could do that, or whatever. And sometimes I'll just be like, all right, so for now you're going to take the dodge action. I'll come back to you at the end and I'll basically switch them in initiative order to be like, have a think what you're going to do. I'll also try, if I know that one player is particularly problematic for that, I'll remind them that their turn is coming up so that they can start thinking about it ahead of time. All right, you're on deck next after so-and-so's roll. So what are you going to do over here? And then it prompts them to be like, oh yeah, shit, what should I actually be thinking about? There's also a difference between whether it's a product of the fact that they're just not paying attention, or whether it's a product of the fact that they are paying attention, but they're just too anxious to know what to do, or trying to do the best thing in the moment.
Yeah.
Those are two very different problems that you can solve.
True. Yeah. I am now that I'm thinking about what I had the most fun doing, I'm like, maybe I don't want to be a healer because I love the fighting, and I loved also
Healers that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be a paladin or a cleric of the light, like smash somebody in the head with a mace and then healing word as a bonus action or something. Or you can also be healers that aren't to do with healing classes. Like you could, I've got a character that I play in. Well, don't play anymore because the campaign kind of ended. But I was a rogue, and I was a rogue with the mobile feat, and so that means I could dash as an action. Mobile gives you the an extra 10 feet movement speed. So dashing on a round means that I've got an extra 20 feet movement. Amazing. Rogues can dash as a bonus action as well, so if I really need to get around the battle, I can. Mobile also means that you don't take attacks of opportunity and all this stuff. So you can basically run around, even like weaving between your enemies, and they're not attacking you. And then I just gave them the healer feat and a healer's kit, and was like, cool. So I can run over and I can bandage you up a little bit really quick. That's my action, and then I can dash away as a bonus action. So you can just be like, oh, I just invest all my gold that I ever get into healing potions, and I've just got like a bandolier of potions, and I just take one out and throw them to a friend. Yeah, heal yourself with this.
Yeah, that's cool. I like
there's
that.
all sorts of different characters you can play. You don't have to be like, I am the healer, so I only do healing.
Yeah, true.
What sort of characters would you like to play as next, do you reckon? Healer/fighter, but what sort of vibe?
I don't know. I think that because I naturally always go into like the like kind of like buffoon.
Yeah.
Like I think Horatio is a little bit like that. I think maybe something a bit more dark and a bit more serious, and maybe a bit more feminine.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think, just to be completely the opposite
Yeah,
from what I
just try
had
it out.
done.
That's usually how things tend to go. I find that it's like, not always, obviously, but I find that people's first D&D character is like the person that they see themselves as, or the person their ideal person, or the person they want to be,
Wow,
and don't get a chance to be in real life. And then their next character is like the opposite of that, because they want to try something so different that they go completely the opposite, and then people jump around all over the place. But that's the trend that I tend to see, is like people go in, I'm a really shy person in real life, so I'm playing a Goliath barbarian who's never worried about doing things, and he's just gonna beat people up.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you're working some stuff out. Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
What was your lowlights of Misfits, or the experience, or the story, or whatever?
I think the lowlights were, I was frustrated with myself that I couldn't get the hang of it.
Right.
And I think because we had so long between filming each session, I would kind of forget how to play, and I would hate turning up and being nervous that I wouldn't get it. Or I was trying to figure out, when I was watching other people play, I wasn't invested in the moment, because I was trying to be like, what am I going to do? What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And I wish that and I feel like I could be like that.
Yeah,
now,
that's
because-
the tough aspect of it, because like I say, when it comes back around to your turn, you can feel unprepared because you haven't spent time focusing on a sheet, but it doesn't necessarily mean you were just like scrolling on your phone or whatever. You were distracted because you were engaged in what was happening.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's your turn and you go, oh shit, mechanics. I need to, what can I do? And vice versa. It's like, I'm so invested in what can I do? How does all this work? That you're like, sweet, I've got a perfect turn. Comes back round to your turn and you're like, cool. So as an action, I'm going to shoot the wizard, and I'm going, oh, so-and-so just killed the wizard on their last turn. What? Oh shit. Fuck, that's ruined everything. Oh God. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on because I was paying attention to this. And eventually with practice, you just get good enough at like, I kind of blending the two and being like, I'm aware of what's happening. I've got an idea of what I'm going to do on my turn and how it works, so I don't need to think about that too much. I can kind of stay aware. And then it comes back around and you're like, cool, does that still work? It does, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So I think that was my low light.
Yeah.
What I would love to do is, and I thought about this after we played Blood on the Clock Tower.
Oh, yeah.
Is, I don't know if that...
We've announced that it's happened.
Okay,
Like they
great.
announced that we have filmed Blood on the Clock Tower. I'm not sure whether it's out or not.
Yeah. I thought I would love to do like a long, like I got tired after a day of it, but like, I don't know, a nighttime one. I think just because nighttime it feels more mystical.
Yeah.
And I would love to have a wine and play
Yeah.
at nighttime.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Just for the vibes of it.
Yeah, there's a different element to like filming, because I guess there's a vibe of like you're doing it with your friends, because normally those games would be played with a wine or at a party or something at a night, like, you know, a house party or something, or like a gathering after dinner or whatever. And then there's a different vibe to like, oh, this is a production that we're filming, so you come to a studio and you film it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I played on lockdown. I played Werewolf on live stream with some of my friends.
Right.
And I loved that. I loved live streaming and having people immediately reacting to it, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And it felt more dangerous because you couldn't edit anything, and I liked that.
Is there any other those sorts of games that you'd love to play?
I don't think I know more about them. I immediately, as soon as we finished playing Blood on the Clock Tower, I was like, I want to do 10 more of these.
I'm glad that you had that reaction, because as people will find out when they watch it, you got really heated in those ones, to the point where I was like, do I have to stop this and speak to them out of character and say, hey, this is a game, are we okay? Is everybody still cool?
We definitely afterwards had to have hugs and be like, no, but we're cool. We're cool.
There was a lot of like, this is getting to the point, it was just under the point where I would have stopped it and paused it and been like, hey, let's talk out of character for a second, because this is getting real hated. So for you to be like, I fucking loved that, I was like, okay, good. I'm glad.
I did.
Because I was kind of worried that we'd ruin some friendships.
No, not at all. And I think after we filmed that, I was also like with Adam Allen and Rowan, I was like, these guys are my employers, and I just yelled at them and called them a bunch of psychos. You know, I was like, boo.
Man. Which you've got to be the right sort of person to enjoy that. That's why we didn't have Alan and Ben in the Blood on the Clock Tower, because they know for a fact they hate that sort of a game. They hate that sort of deception game. They played Among Us during lockdown, which is very much a lying to your friends' faces kind of game. And Adam excels at it and loves it. I love those sorts of games. Ben and Alan got to the point where they almost ruined friendships with Adam and stuff over it, because like during the game he's like, I swear on my mother, Ben, I swear.
Oh, no, you
and it's
can't
like, dude.
swear on my mother.
Which is why we literally made that a rule when we were doing Blood on the
Yeah.
Clock Tower. Hey, watch what we're saying during this. Like, you can't swear on people's lives. Like, yes, this is a game where deception is expected. You are meant to lie to people's faces. We know that going into it, but let's keep out the swearing on people's lives.
Yeah. No, I love the deceiving games. I love Secret Hitler as well.
Secret Hitler's a great
So
game.
fun.
I'm not sure that it would go well on Viva Plus or Viva Little League stuff because of the Hitler fascist element to it,
Yeah.
especially in current climates when
Yes,
things are going on there. But yeah, it's a fantastic, fun game. I've got a friend who's like, whenever we play it, he just is always Hitler somehow. He
Oh,
got to
no.
the point where it gets dealt out, and he goes, "No, fuck that! No, we're redealing."
We're going again. That's so funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. Well, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. So I just want to talk more about like future things. So we know where you're at with Viva and your acting stuff now. What are you working on currently and into the near future?
Currently, I'm trying to make money at the moment.
Right.
Because I'm hoping that within the next year or so, I'll be able to move to Australia.
Right.
Because I think that this is not confirmed, but I'm kind of like, what's the next new adventure?
Right.
And I would be sad because I love playing with Viva so much.
Mm.
But I hope that,
It's not a million miles away.
it's not a million miles away.
Brit's in Australia now, and she comes back for Viva stuff from time to time.
Yeah. So that's kind of
Whereabouts would you be thinking? Sydney, Melbourne?
Melbourne.
Melbourne's great, eh?
Yeah. They've got a really great comedy and improv
Yeah.
scene.
Melbourne reminds me a lot of Wellington. You ever feel that?
Yeah. Artsy.
Very artsy, lots of cafes,
Cool
lots
little
of like,
alleyways.
yeah, you're walking down the street and you see like a upside down cow in a tree or something. You're like, what the hell? Is that some art project? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, so that's me. I'm working on I'm working on a theatre show at the moment that I want to make
Nice.
with a new character I've developed, which is Nosferatu,
Right.
based off of the original
Right.
Nosferatu, not the new
Right.
horny Nosferatu. Yeah, and so I want to do a solo show with him. I would love to get more inspired to write something for screen, but it just hasn't come to me yet.
Right.
What's next for you, Rob?
Well, I also the chance of moving to Australia is also on the cards for me because I've got a partner. Well, complicated. I've got a long distance partner that lives in Australia, and long distance sucks. So there's a chance that I would move to Australia as well. I would just have to factor in the cost of coming back to New Zealand to film D&D stuff with Viva several times a year for that. Because there'd be D&D logic and there'd be different campaigns and things like that.
Yeah.
With us filming all of the campaign in one go, that would make it a lot more cost effective because I'd only have to fly back once for all of that. So that's a chance. There's also I'm continuing to make all of the stuff that I'm currently making. One of the best parts about my life, I find, is that I'm doing what I want to do. I'm already kind of achieving the thing. I don't really have like a blue sky end goal future thing that I'm working towards because I'm already doing what I want to be doing,
That's so nice.
which is making D&D content, but deeper than that, it's just like following whatever I want to do. I don't hold myself to any kind of expectation that I'll be doing this forever. Maybe I will if I keep enjoying it forever. But in 5 years' time, maybe I discovered that I want to try my hand at writing, and I want to write a novel, because I definitely have discovered through D&D that I'm a very good storyteller, and I really enjoy telling stories and really enjoy coming up with the stories. So maybe I want to try writing a novel at some point, and then it's like maybe I do that while I'm doing D&D. Maybe I take a break from D&D to do it. Who knows? I want to just keep living a life where I can earn enough to pay the bills and not worry about where the next pay packet's coming from.
Yeah.
But also just to diversify and do what I want to do. I want to like publish D&D modules and things. I want to play D&D with some of the big name celebrities and things like that. But those are all like bonuses that I'd love to do, but not working towards them in particular. I'm just following my smiles, as it were.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place to be in. I'm incredibly lucky that I got this sort of platform with Viva where people can find my work and enjoy it to the degree where it pays my money.
Yeah.
And I've thankfully made a point of diversifying where all of my income comes from, so that I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. Because I know a few content creators that were like really big on Twitter, and then Twitter became a Nazi cesspool, and they were like, "Well, I've lost everything.
Yes.
It's time to start again on Instagram or something."
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, "Oh, I've done pretty well for myself on Twitch. I make stuff and put it on my YouTube channel, so that's growing as well. I've got my Viva income that comes from the Viva channel, and I've got my Patreon where people can support me on Patreon. I've got all of these. I've got merch store. I've diversified so that I'm like, I'm okay as long as combined that supports me. Then I don't need to worry about like, oh, but I could be earning more. Yeah, I could be earning more, and if I did start earning more, I'd be able to then start paying for like a social media manager or something, or I'd be able to start paying for a full-time editor, or I'd be able to, expand the Robert Hartley GM team more than it currently is. So yeah, there's things that I could do, but if it stays at this level forever, then I'm not complaining. I'm doing what I love doing, and I'm enjoying it, and it's earning me enough to like travel and to go to conventions and things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. And I think that gratitude is, I've read it so many times, like the key to happiness.
Yeah.
So we could always have more money.
Yeah, you can always have more money, but as long as you're not living for something that might come later. Like be happy with, just try and find happiness in what you've got currently.
Yeah.
And then you can always strive for more than that, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy and be grateful for what you've got currently.
Totally. My parents actually asked me, they were like, what's your dream? Like, what's your end goal with all this acting and all this stuff? And I was like, actually, my dream would be, like, if I could do Viva stuff every day for the rest of my life, that would be my dream. I am constantly pinching myself. I get to dress up in these fucking cool costumes and make a dick of myself and get paid for it.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's so
like
fun.
there's so many times, especially with D&D, with like green screen stuff, that, and Ben is on this wave as well. He's often the one that I turn to. I'm just like, this is what we do for a living.
I know.
It's just like, it's usually at the end of some scene where I'm dressed in fucking hanky panky with my fucking bulge out and weird fucking pink hooves.
Yeah.
And then cut, and you're like, what are we doing?
I'm a full-grown adult.
There are people right now performing surgery on brains.
Yeah,
There are people right
true.
now doing like taxes and doing like people who are coding important shit or looking after nuclear missiles or whatever the fuck. And dooby.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, time to get into your fucking giant shark costume now. Or
Yes.
stupid shit. Stupid. But I used to kind of lessen myself through that, being like, what I do is not important. But I've had so many people over the years, like, essentially tell me that they're alive because of what we do. Like,
Wow.
the stuff that we do is important because it brings levity, especially in times like this, when you need an escape from just how fucked up the world is in so many ways. And it's really important. And I stopped sort of belittling myself and the work that we do, because I started acknowledging that, yes, I'm not a brain surgeon. Yes, I'm not making frontier scientific research discoveries, but we are giving people, it's a service that is important. And it's one of the reasons why acting is one of the oldest professions. It's storytelling is important. We do need it. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of how we connect. It's a part of how we explore other aspects of us and humanity without having to actually do those things. You can explore it through stories and be like, what would it be like to put myself in that person's shoes? And so I do think what we do is important. I don't think it's the most important, but I think it's still one of the things that would be needed in a post-apocalyptic world.
It adds value, for sure.
Yeah. Let's just end the chat with some questions from my audience, from the fine folk.
Thank you, fine folk.
Thank you, fine folk, for submitting your questions on my Discord. If you want to submit questions for any future in-person short rests, you can join my Discord. Centauri asks, improv Viva was hilarious. Did you find your experience in improv helped you with your Dungeons and Dragons stuff?
Absolutely, yes. It was so helpful. And it was the only, it's not this grim, but it was the main thing that gave me confidence, because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really know how to play D&D. And I was like, but I do know how to improvise.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun.
Like, I got this.
Yeah.
I know how to be an improv actor. If I treat it like an improv exercise, I can do this.
Exactly, yeah.
From Mazekeeper, what made you decide to use the accent you chose for Horatio? Did you study a specific accent to use? How do you feel it went?
That's a great question. So at the time, I was actually making a Western theatre show. And so I had been doing all of those accents. And so the accent was just on the brain for me.
Just on the brain.
And I've actually done a character before in improv many years ago that was a Southern gentleman.
Right.
And so that type of character was familiar to me, and it's fun.
It's fun.
I have lots of fun playing it, so that's why I chose
Are there any accents that you really struggle with that you'd like to be better at?
Yeah, I'm not really. I would love to be better at American, just because it comes up so often. Standard American, like if it's like a parody Southern, like that's fine. But if I have to do standard,
just Generican, yeah.
Like, can Generican? Can you
Generican.
do it?
Yeah, I can do Generican pretty well. So I did an accent course a while ago where we were practicing. I mean, I've just thrown myself into it without much, warm up. So it's not going to be perfect, but. I did an accent course with an American who really praised me on what I was able to achieve at the end of it. I'm not so great at the differentiation of the different states of America yet. Whenever I try Southern, I can't really work out which of the Southern states I'm doing. It kind of jumps around a little bit. Some people tell me, like, I think I'm doing like Texan, and they're like, that's more Georgian. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about the regional differences. Like, I still struggle sometimes with like New Yorker versus like Brooklyn. And then you got your like Valley Girl, oh my God, kind of West Coast like California kind of accent.
So I find them easier to do if you can do a character. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the Valley Girl accent is easier because I'm like, oh well, that's a character.
Yeah.
Whereas standard
American, Generican.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like everything in the middle. Everything is kind of in the middle. It's not quite Midwest either. Like. Yeah, they've got very different regions that are a little difficult to differentiate, which is good because I have watched videos of the different dialects and been like, these are close enough that I can get away with any one of them. Like, these are not. And one of the best things about accents is it's about consistency. It's not about like specific vowels. It's about, because everybody has different influences on their accent. So someone from this particular town is going to sound different to someone else from that particular town because they got a different vocal makeup, but also because they've got different parents who have different voices as well. They've spent different time in different class structure as well. So like that has influence on the way that you speak, your education level, and the vocabulary you use. Also, like if you've traveled at all, or if you're the sort of mimic who picks up other people's accents really easily. And so it's not really about getting a perfect thing, because there is no one particular accent that is generic American. But if you can just stay consistent with the vowel choices you use and the consonants and how you say things and how you stress things, then eventually people can't argue that you're doing it wrong.
True.
Spoiler question, but we've talked about this already, so it's fine. How traumatic did you find the end with Horatio's mad scramble to save Arrow?
Oh yeah, I found it traumatic. In the moment, I was really determined. I was like, no, I'm smart enough. I will figure out a way.
I can work this out.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sure I can figure it out. And I really didn't want to lose a member of our party, because I love playing with all the girls, and I was like, I want to keep playing with Brit, and as the character I didn't want to lose Arrow, so it was quite traumatic. And it's funny because I think because we're adults, immediately I was like, don't get too emotional. And then Phoenix was so emotional. I was like, oh, I probably could have just let it go. But in the moment, I was like, no, hold it together. You're going to save her. So yeah, it was quite traumatic.
Yeah,
I fully believed I'd be able to do it.
Yeah, and quite often I will side with the players a little bit more. I'm quite a lenient DM when it comes to like yes, I'll bring back consequences as we talked about, but I will usually not be trying to kill the players because the way that I come up with the story is usually so heavily tied to the player's backstory that it would make no sense for that character to die and somebody else random to just show up and start taking on the same quest that we've already established, because that quest was linked to that person's backstory, not yours.
True.
So I tend to give some ways of like plot armor to keep the people alive. Like I'll put them in dire straits, but I'll work with them to try and like find ways to bring them back and stuff. But with this one tying up her story so well and being right at the end of the campaign, I just felt like it was I'm not going to fudge the dice to help you out in this situation. I was like, if you can find a way to use your abilities to bring her back, then that makes sense. Otherwise, you can't.
Yeah.
And there's always resurrection stuff in the game. There's always like ways that you could have, people can headcanon it for themselves if they want to be like, oh, I choose to believe that they took her body up to Gurdon and found some cleric that would resurrect her. But in my personal headcanon, even if you'd tried to do that, her spirit wouldn't have been willing to return. She'd have been like, no, I think I've done what I needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Tipped Server asks, non-D&D question. I absolutely adored the outfits you had while filming Tales of the Misfits. Do you have any tips for adding more colour and fun patterns into a wardrobe? Are there any?
So
what a nice question, right?
That's lovely.
Are there any
Thank
resources you sugged to learn how to style bright or bold clothing?
That is so lovely. I made a conscious choice to wear bright colours because I think that they look better on screen, especially in the tavern. Everything's so dark. Any tips? I think my tip would be try and think about if you were looking at someone wearing that outfit that isn't you, because I think often we're so hard on ourselves and you'd be like, I can't pull this off. But if you saw someone wearing that outfit and you think they would look cool, then just go for it.
Like look yourself in the mirror and just cut your head off and be like, is this objectively a nice outfit?
Yeah.
Would I judge somebody else wearing that if it wasn't me?
And I think just be bold and have fun and don't overthink it. Like I'd often wear things that don't go together, but I think just I like to have fun with what I'm wearing.
I also think like I've never really cared what people think of me too much, but I also find it useful to just remind yourself how little other people think about you. Like you're just like you're going to be an NPC in their life. They've got their own thing going on. They're not going to spend all of their time like analysing your outfit in the same way that you are.
Totally.
Idra says, what's your favourite thing about playing D&D?
My favourite thing about playing D&D is there's so many things, but my favourite thing would be it would be laughing with my friends. I think I'd love when we were all cracking up together, and I would say laughing and also the emotional journey. Like my favourite thing is that you can be so silly, cracking up, and then a few sessions later everyone's kind of in tears and distraught. I love how you get really emotionally affected by what's going on, and that was surprising to me. I didn't think that would happen.
Happens when you're with me, baby.
Yeah.
I do pride myself on being able to like pull a really poignant moment out of otherwise silliness. And the writing the scenes for Sneaky, for instance, to have that moment with her sister and stuff like that. I always enjoy writing those, pulling those moments out where I'm like, haha, got you all in tears. Centauri asks, if you had the chance to revisit Horatio in future, is there anything you'd want to explore more about him or do differently?
If I revisited him, I would flesh out his backstory more, so that we had a chance to find out where he's from. And I think that I played him quite one note, so I would enjoy. As a player, I was really feeling lots of different emotions, but I think for Horatio, he was not as affected by what was going on. So that's something that I would like to explore.
Yeah, explore some more of his depth. Maybe even just exploring why he is that way. Like, why has he chosen to like dull his, like, maybe we see some of his backstory where he's like a very expressive person and was kind of punished for that or whatever. And now his arc in the next time we see him could be like him learning to be like, it's okay to take up space. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to explore emotions more.
Yeah.
I loved the idea of just exploring his sexuality a little throughout the entire thing, of just like the constant will they won't they flirting with Bublé that never like on screen happened anyway, and then the flirting at the end with Arrow's spirit being like, hey, we'll fuck in the afterlife sort of thing. Been like Horatio's poly for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Too much love here to stick to one person. The Mazman mechanic asks, were you jealous of Rob getting to play Hanky Panky?
No, I wasn't jealous. I was. What's that term in poly relationships?
Compersion.
I had compersion.
Yeah.
I was happy
like,
for your happiness.
happy that you're getting it. Yeah, I love that.
No,
I love that.
Not jealous. Happy that Hanky came back.
Fella asks, why did you decide to not really explore much of Horatio's backstory? I think we talked about that a little bit, but like, was there more of a reason? It was just mainly that you didn't know that you'd enjoy it.
I didn't know. I was scared of getting it wrong. I didn't know how in depth to go. I think maybe my improv brain did screw me over a little bit there because in improv, when you're doing scenes, you don't want to talk too much about people outside of the scene. You want to keep it contained. And then like for when Bublé and Sneaky had, and all the girls actually, they had other people populating like families and stuff, or lack thereof. I was like,
I should have had a character. I should have had a family. I should have had something.
Yeah.
I mean, we live and learn, don't we?
We do.
And it's not going to be the last time that we'll be playing D&D. Even with even if it's not a campaign, we'll be doing one-shots and stuff forevermore, I imagine.
Yeah.
There's always things that I love to put out of like Halloween one-shot where we just do a spooky something and just like filmed and edited and finished in a single day kind of thing.
Yeah, fun.
So I'm sure there's plenty more opportunities for us to explore other things with you. Last question we got from the audience was Michael Pilot asked, are the horns and hooves now an extension of you?
Are the horns and hooves now an extension of me? No, but I wish they were because I felt very powerful. I was wearing platform shoes. The platform was honestly, that's why I looked so much taller than everyone, that big. And I loved everything about my costume because it made me feel powerful. So
what was it, like, other than the fact that it was swelteringly hot under lights and you had big furry legs on, and was that enjoyable at all? Or was it?
That was a little bit.
Was
hot
it a little bit like too much?
Sometimes it was a little bit too much, but most of the time it was fun. The thing that was the most annoying about my costume is that the leather breastplate had little, I guess, rivets or screws, and my hair got caught in it.
Oh, right.
And so when I'd get undressed, I'd be like, and I'd like rip it.
Velcro.
But worth it. I loved that costume. It was really
fun. It was great. It was a lot of fun. All of the like little blooper almost bits in the green screen of the horns just like coming off or like just slipping down or whatever, and just be like, keep rolling, roll with it. That's part of the janky nature that people are drawn to with the D&D green screens, I think. When they do see his corpse and when they see his when something malfunctions. At one point I was laughing as Strakel, and like his tooth just fell off. I was like, cool,
that happened.
It happened.
Yeah.
Fuck, I don't know why I just thought of it, but I thought about a moment when in the final fight and you and the pirate are just like super flirting. Like, I think he's like grappling you or something. And every scene we just turned into these two just like going off for a date. Like every time we cut away for yar, yar, and then slow down and be like, so do you want to grab a coffee? I think at one point you like say, I think we were like, let's test to see when they cut us. Because it was like, oh, do you want me to? And I think I can't even remember the context. I was like lying down and you were like, I'm going to squat on your dick. and we were like, are we continuing? Okay, cool. We're going to keep going, are we? Cool.
Like, this is now for a different channel.
We're just going to make OnlyFans, only horns.
Only horns.
Nice.
That would go off.
Well,
I also want to say thank you to your followers for taking the time to ask me questions, because it blows my mind that people care enough about the stupid shite that happens.
People love it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you. I felt the same, but yeah, it's taken a while for me to get over that sort of imposter syndrome of being like, people care about what I've got to say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for caring about what we have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for your questions. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for our short rest. If this was a actual short rest in-game, we would now have our some of our spell slots back, depending on what class we're playing. We'd have some health points back. What sort of a quest are we off to complete now that we've finished our short rest? We've got to leave the tavern, got to pay the tavern wench.
Yes, we're
Now
paying the tavern. We step out of the tavern and we are surrounded by an army of frogs. And you know who is heading the army of frogs.
A certain king that was very disappointed to have most of his forest burnt down by one particular arson.
Yeah, my favourite king. And so we're straight into battle.
King Conroe. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Where can people find you and more of your work?
On Instagram, @re_McCall. I also have a Twitch channel that I don't really know how to use, so I don't use it that often. But maybe I will learn to use it more.
Everything is linked below, and thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was a short rest. If you've got anybody in mind that you'd like me to chat to for a short rest, let me know in the comments.